The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, April 14th, 2025. I'm your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with David Palmer. David may not have been the first to discover chair massage, but like Columbus, there is no doubt that he was the first to put it on the map. That was the perspective of Scott Lamp, president of the American Massage Therapy Association, in November of 1997, when he chose to honor David Palmer with the prestigious President's Award for his contribution to the massage profession. That same year, Massage Magazine recognized David as the father of contemporary chair massage, highlighting the pivotal role he played in the rise of what has become one of the most accessible and widespread forms of bodywork. David's journey began in 1982 when he started experimenting with training graduates of his school, the Amma Institute of Traditional Japanese Massage, to adapt acupressure massage techniques to work with clients in a chair rather than on a table. Just a few years later, in 1986, he unveiled the first professional massage chair and launched TouchPro International, setting the stage for the global spread of chair massage through practitioner training, innovative techniques, and effective marketing strategies. Today, I'm pleased to welcome 2007 Massage Therapy Hall of Fame inductee David Palmer. Welcome, David.
Good to be here, Kirby. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is going to be an absolute treat of an episode, I'm sure. Here at the Hands of History podcast, though, we like to get started. Take me way back to your background and what drew you initially to massage therapy, David.
Initially, it had been on my radar for about 10 years. I'd gotten Rolfing sessions in my 20s when Rolfers were few and far between. And I was getting 10 sessions. It took about 10 months because the person who was delivering them to me in Chicago at that time was still going to classes at the Rolf Institute in Boulder. So I had the freshest take on the work. And at that time, when I had the Rolfing experience, I thought to myself, gosh, it'd be fun to do this. I could really, it was very, very helpful for me, for sure, as a form of body work. And I began thinking that, exploring the possibility of getting into it, and then realizing very quickly that in order to get into it, you had to have a healthcare background or a massage background in order to even apply. And I had neither. So I put it to the side. But it was always there. In one of those many questioning periods that I had, I looked down the roads that I had said no to in the past in my personal history, and one of them was the Rolfing. And so I looked it up again, found the same information, and then thought, well, hey, why don't I go to massage school? And I was in my early 30s at the time. I went to a place. At that time I was living in San Francisco. I went to a spa, the only Japanese spa in San Francisco, got a massage, loved it. Loved the Japanese style massage. As I came out, I asked the person at the front desk, do you know any place that trains in this type of work? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, we have a school. I ended up in classes a few weeks later, and it turned out it was the last class that my teacher, who was Japanese, ever taught. He taught for 3 years in the school. And so I got a basic training in Japanese massage, went to work in the spa that I got the massage at, the original massage at, and then I was off and running from that point. Yeah. 2 years later, I took over the massage school when my teacher went back to Japan. He spent a couple of years working with me to help qualify me to be training in at least minimal Japanese massage. It was Amma, which is traditional Japanese massage, as opposed to shiatsu, which is a more contemporary version of Japanese massage. And shortly, I don't know if you want to get into it this quickly, but shortly after I began running the school, I realized that most of the people graduating from massage school were not able to be gainfully employed. So I looked at that issue and discovered that it was basically a packaging issue. From a marketing point of view, we could say it was really a packaging issue, that if you're trying to get people to go into a private room behind closed doors, take off all their clothes with another person in the room, lay down and pay for the process, there was only one other image that would jump into people's heads that related to that. And so the problem of what happens in the bedroom and what happens in the massage room have been inextricably entwined in people's minds. That was the problem. What I did, very simply, was I took it out from behind closed doors. Instead of requiring people to lie naked on a table, I let them sit upright on a chair and keep their clothes on, and shortened the process so that it would be within reach of most people's budget. And thus, seated massage, later become known as chair massage, was born.
Excellent. I want us to take this piece by piece because there's a lot of information in that. First of all, I want to talk about your introduction to it. Started in Chicago. Are you from the Illinois area?
Yeah, I'm a country boy from northern Illinois. Grew up on a lake very close to the Wisconsin border, and it was a pretty idyllic childhood.
Interesting. And you say that your first introduction to massage, or perhaps body work is a better word, was a Rolfing techniques. What drew you to Rolfing initially, David? Was there injury, I'm assuming?
No, it was there were a number of things that slowly unfolded. We're not always conscious of why we do what we do. And matter of fact, I always say that my unconscious parts are much smarter than my conscious parts. At that particular moment, I did have some physical difficulties with chronic torticollis, stiff neck. And I had tried many things in my early 20s, sleeping with a pillow, without a pillow, sleeping on my side, on my back, sleeping on a hard surface, a soft surface, and nothing seemed to help. And that's what took me to Rolfing. And it opened me up in so many ways. The basic conclusion that I eventually came to was that I was locked up from the neck down, that I was I am primarily a left brain thinker by default, not just because I'm male, but truly, if I wasn't doing massage, I probably would have ended up being a computer programmer or something like that. And I was not in touch with my body. It's a symptom we see often in this culture. I call it the numbing of America. And we tend to, since the Enlightenment, we've tended to put more and more emphasis on what happens in our mind, and we tend to think that our minds are in charge. The head is in charge of everything else, and it's that whole mind-body split that is pretty commonly understood. And I realized that I was split in that way. In my case, it probably had a lot to do with being gay and having disowned my sexuality until I was into my 20s. And it's not unrelated that about the time I was getting Rolfed was also about the time that I was beginning to work through coming out of the closet. And ever since then, I've been reintegrating my mind with my body, or my body with my mind. And spirit, let's throw that in as well. And so it affected me very deeply. Now, later, I became aware that on another level, the reason that I was getting into massage, and I learned this in massage school, was because I had reticence about being touched. So I always tell one story about how I didn't like people to touch my head, touch my hair affectionately or any other way. I trace that back at one moment in time to the fact that my father cut my hair, and it was never a comfortable experience. And it got even less comfortable as I got into my teenage years and and this is back in the 60s, people were starting to grow their hair longer, except for me. But just the whole experience was just not a comfortable experience. It was, hot, sticky, and I tied it to my father. As soon as I figured that out, I broke that spell, interestingly enough. And at that moment, I hadn't been having haircuts from my father. I, of course, moved out of the house when I was 18 and living on my own. So now here I am in my 20s, still dealing with this touch issue. And once I got to the bottom of it, at the moment I had a ponytail, 60s, remember, went home to visit my parents. I was living in Chicago, working in Chicago at the time. Went home and visited my parents and got my father to cut my hair. We've got this wonderful photograph of him just beaming with his arm around my shoulders at my short haircut. So I knew that touch was an issue. I knew it was an issue in massage school because when we began massaging the abdomen, I could feel myself clenching up, my whole body reacting to that. And that's when I began to understand the agendas, the hidden agendas that people often have when they are moving in one direction or another. My move to massage school was basically a move toward wanting to become more comfortable with touch. And I think that that's an agenda that most people have, whether they know it or not, when they go to massage school. We live in a touch negative culture rather than a touch positive culture. And so we're all born into that particular vat of touch carefulness. And during my life, I'd hoped that it would get better as it got better for me. But in point of fact, it's gotten worse. And we have teachers who can't touch their students, ministers who can't touch their congregants. We have no touch policies in the workplace. We've got stranger danger. We've got a whole cultural antipathy toward touch, culminated in the COVID epidemic, where we weren't even allowed to touch. Nobody was allowed to touch at that point. So the fear of touch and the negative attitude toward touch has gotten worse since I've been in the massage industry since 1980, 46 years ago. When I began doing the seated massage, the chair massage, I had that in mind, that this is a way to make positive touch accessible to more people. So when people ask me what I do now, I say I'm a touch educator. I'm a positive touch educator, because that's really foundational to my involvement in the massage industry.
I want to thank you so much for that answer, David. That was rich with so many levels there are so many paths you've just laid out that I could go down to. I'm going to try and stick and not miss any of this, but I wanted to ask you about Rolfing and how long it was between those initial Rolfing session to the time that you were in California and you decided to follow through and push through those barriers, your aversion to touch.
It was about almost 10 years. And so it was really when I was about 33 that I finally got into massage, and that I finally identified that as a pathway for me. And let me just say, too, that I had I'd been involved in social services for the first 10 years. Participated in, helped get funding for social service programs. And that was kind of my world. But that particular world, although it's incredibly important, and I still have many friends who are doing social services, for me, it always felt like a Band-Aid. I was working with runaway kids and youth services in Chicago mostly, and then with gay social services, LGBTQIA social services in Berkeley when I lived in San Francisco. But there was not the immediacy of the reward that comes with giving a massage. You never know when you put the Band-Aid on somebody and send them back out to live in the world again, whether you've made a difference or not. When I give a 10-minute or a 15-minute or a 20-minute chair massage, the results are immediately apparent. and very satisfying to both the person in the chair and myself. The feedback loop is a lot shorter, and I think that may have something to do with my need for immediate gratification. But that was, I'm still in the quote unquote helping professions. Obviously, that's a through line for the work that I've done in my life. I sincerely believe that a life of service is the kind of life that I'm meant to lead. And so that takes many forms, but for the past 46 years, it's taking the form of providing positive touch to people's lives.
Absolutely. I want to ask you, David, do you feel that the background that you had in social services helped in any way through your massage therapy education?
Immensely. One of the things that I learned, when I began doing massage, in a spa for 2 years, I had to make a decision because it was a full-time job. I had to make a decision. Was I going to leave the whole life that I'd lived up to that point behind? Did I like massage enough to be able to jettison all of the past experiences that I'd had? I wouldn't have called it a career path because I never believed in a career path until I found massage. And the answer that came back was yes, I really do love this work that much. And I do think it's that important. And not that what I had been doing wasn't important, but it was as important, and I could find it be fulfilling. But then the lesson that I learned was that you never leave anything behind. So the work that I'd done nationally, creating the National Runaway Switchboard in Chicago, and having contacts and flying around and going to conferences and meeting other people in the field, going on radio shows and TV and all the media stuff in those days. Those all eventually became the foundation under which I was able to build the work that I've been privileged to do with massage. I'm kind of at another place like that in my life. I kind of see, particularly when you're young, you try many, many things, and then a few of them you actually work on. But you start out with a wide range, and you slowly things narrow until you get clearer, and then you reach a point where it becomes, you make a decision and it becomes very clear. And then from that point, the pyramid inverts and you start going out again in many, many, many different directions, because everything's connected, of course, so you begin, in my case, you begin to see everything through a lens of professional touch or touch in general. And I did that for many decades, and then I reached a moment when I'm not doing much teaching anymore. I had spent most of the past decade taking care of my mom, who, when she turned 90, that's what brought me out to the East Coast. And I thought because she wasn't in such good shape, but little did I know that 40 minutes of massage every night can really give somebody something to look forward to. And so she lived until she was 99, almost 100, which was its own lesson. So after going wide with chair massage, things began to get narrow and narrow as I got older and older. And I began to think about what the next thing would be. And after my mother passed away, well, that was the time to figure it out. And what I realized was that at my age, the one thing that I can definitely do is begin to be an archivist for the chair massage industry in general, TouchPro, my particular business, and maybe even some parts of my life that other people may find interesting as well.
Definitely. What an exciting journey that you're on. Then it sounds like, David, and of particular interest to someone like me who has a certain, at least respect for history and the archival process and the importance of it. What prompted the move to California, David?
So from Chicago, I'd kind of finished the last social service agency job, and the move to California was prompted by my first lover, who was from San Jose. And so we moved out to San Francisco, which has been, of course, kind of the mecca for LGBTQ folks. That's where I kind of blossomed in that regard. And then I did take that job as a co-executive director with a woman, a lesbian, out at the Pacific Center for Human Growth, which still exists today in Berkeley. So I got immersed in gay social services, and that was wonderful. As a personal development for me, it was very lucky. We always say when you teach something, you learn it twice. And so one of the first things that got me into that was being a public speaker in the 70s. This would be at high schools, colleges, adult education groups and whatnot about homosexuality. And so I had to kind of figure it out. And it forced me to, do a deeper dive and develop a coherent perspective on calling myself gay, and which for me is a political term. At that time, not a lot of people were calling themselves gay. And even though I firmly believe in the spectrum of sexuality that exists from exclusively heteronormative to exclusively homosexual, I think that most people are somewhere in between, and I do for sure. But as a political statement, I felt it was important to be able to say, to stand up and say I'm gay. Oddly enough, in this particular moment that we live in, it becomes important again to do that.
Unfortunately.
But yeah, that's how I got out to San Francisco.
Do you care if I ask you more questions about your identity, David?
Not at all. No.
Okay. It doesn't escape me that at the time that you were making the move, you're in California, that's really the birth of the gay liberation movement in the 1970s, and particularly there in California.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me just like about living through that history?
Well, there are two pieces of it. The one that you mentioned, which was the kind of the beginning, and when job programs were being developed, when social service programs were being developed, when people, it was the era of Harvey Milk, when he got elected, the second openly gay person to ever be elected to public office that we know of. And then the tail end of that, I had been attempting to put together a gay national educational switchboard, and it wasn't successful because I wasn't able to raise enough money to keep it going. It was successful when it was operating, and I certainly learned a lot. But one of the last-ditch efforts I made in raising money for it was appealing to Harvey Milk, and I met him in his office, and we talked about it, and that was the same office that he was assassinated in 2 weeks later. On my birthday. I'll never forgive Dan White for that, by the way, spoiling my birthday. Dan White was the assassin, the name of the assassin. So he killed the mayor and he killed Harvey Milk. And that really did mobilize the LGBT community in a very big way and move things along a lot faster in reaction to that horrific event. In the same way, that the HIV/AIDS crisis in the 80s became another point of transition for the LGBTQIA community. And it was traumatic. When COVID happened, I said, well, here comes the second pandemic of my life. It was not an unfamiliar situation for me to deal with. And we still had some of the same issues, even around touch and of course sexual touch, and so it changed the culture. HIV/AIDS changed the sexual behavior of the culture forevermore, and brought awareness and good information about safe sex and how to have that. So we're still kind of in that touch arena, oddly enough. And it was a learning experience. My partner passed away during that epidemic. I, by the grace of God, was not infected, even though I could have been too many times. So I lived through it intimately, with friends. I'm still living through it today. I've got a friend in San Francisco who was also in social services who kind of never recovered from the number of friends that he had that passed away. And I'm currently helping him at a distance now, try and go through transitions in his life with his health situation and whatnot. So it's still with me and will always be with you. You never get over it, you just get through it. It was also significant because one of my mentors, the most important mentor about touch in my life, began working in the AIDS ward of the San Francisco General Hospital in 1983, I believe it was. Her name was Irene Smith. She was a protege of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She eventually, our paths crossed. I knew about her for a number of years. And by that time, I was involved in massage. But our paths crossed at her, I think it was 50th birthday, maybe 40th or 50th, when I threw a fundraiser for her. No, actually, it was my 50th birthday. I think it was 40th or 50th. I can't remember. These decades fly by. But I threw a roast for myself. All my friends, came to a restaurant and made fun of me, but I charged for it. I made it a fundraiser, and her organization called Service Through Touch was the recipient of the money that we raised that night. And so she showed up, and that was the first time that I ever met her. We became fast friends. I ended up on her board of directors. We went through much together. And as I say, she was my mentor on the subject of touch. So she came out of the AIDS movement and delivered the most profound education about touch that I could have ever wanted or asked for. Unfortunately, she passed away a couple of years ago, but I do have access to her archives. And one of the things I'm going to be doing in this part of my life is trying to make those available to a wider group of people as well.
It's important work. Being out, and especially in the 70s, the 80s, how do you feel like that potentially impacted your education, especially in something that is so high touched at a time where sex and sexuality, certainly for the queer community, was so precarious?
Yeah, well, a number of things. First of all, a lot of men who went into massage were gay in that time. Scott, who you quoted at the beginning of the interview, who became president of the AMTA, is a gay man. And we used to get together. I used to go to the conventions, the AMTA conventions, and we'd always get together and find each other. And although I do remember that people were cautious, I wasn't particularly cautious, but a lot of the other folks were kind of kept it on the down low. And I'd be the one who'd, be yelling across the room to Ken Bridgman saying, "Hey, girlfriend," and, it was just it was something, a place that needed to be more openly welcoming, even though it was. It was clearly, I landed in a profession that was very accepting because it was very alternative. The massage industry in the 70s and 80s was outside the normative range for sure. So, it attracted a lot of new agey weirdos and whatnot and lost children, whatever. And it was older. It was an older group. It wasn't, people coming fresh out of high school. So what's happened over the years, in many regards, is that the profession has gotten more conservative as it's gotten more monetized. So the schools back in the 70s and 80s, they were just people, like me with not so much education, but had a little bit more education than the students that we were training. And we were able to create something out of that, create an education. And then in the mid 80s is when the consolidation happened with the schools. There was a schools organization that would meet at every AMTA convention. and the schools would have their time when they'd get together and meet. And out of that, out of schools, really came the contemporary idea that we have about the massage profession. You probably know that the name of the AMTA was not always the American Massage Therapy Association. It was the American Massage and Therapy Association. So there was this distinction made between massage and massage therapy. In 1984, I believe it was, they took the ampersand out of the middle of the name and merged them together so that massage therapy became the one level. I happen to think that that was a horrible mistake, but that was a little before my time getting involved in the profession. Had either chair massage been a little earlier or that decision made a little later, we might have a different industry today. But that's just timing is everything.
It's interesting to think about the way things might have been. Thank you for sharing all of that with me, David. I could sit here and talk with you for hours going down these rabbit holes. Certainly, when I came out, there was a lot of shame still around sexual identity. And then there's also, like you've said before in this interview, we're so touch and pleasure are criminalized. You're really made to feel ashamed for experiencing pleasure and touch in this world. So I really want to thank you for sharing all of that with me. I want to know, because your entry-level education, it sounds like, was heavily Japanese inspired.
Yeah.
Did going through that program meet the expectations that you had with your previous bodywork experience being Rolfing, and how you feel the difference between those two?
It kind of, in a way, exceeded my expectations. Rolfing, is a system of 10 sessions. I don't know what it is now, but that's when it was when I was there. And there was only one type of Rolfing, and that was Ida Rolf's kind of Rolfing, which was very strong, very intense. So maybe I've got a masochistic part that likes that intensity. Who knows? But I found that acupressure massage, which is the umbrella under which traditional Japanese massage flows. Oddly enough, shiatsu doesn't. Shiatsu, the theoretical framework, was a Western framework. And, in chiropractic and all that, they had points, but Namakoshi, who developed the contemporary version of shiatsu, specifically didn't want traditional Chinese medicine to be the underlying foundation. And you have to remember it was post-World War II, and all of the traditional healing practices were being suppressed in Japan. And so, he wanted, and also he he had a big ego, and he wanted to be the face of Japanese massage. And so he created Namakoshi Shiatsu, which was not based on traditional Chinese medicine. It was based on Western medical theory, but it did involve points. Even he called one point a Namakoshi point, oddly enough. And so, and the school that I went to originally, that I took the last class in, was called the Kabuki Shiatsu School, because as a master marketer, one of the things Namakoshi did was he was the only one to translate books about massage into foreign languages, German initially, French, English. So when the people came back from the war, soldiers came back from the war and had experienced massage in Japan, and looked for it in their home country, the only thing they could find was Namakoshi Shiatsu. So that's how Shiatsu became the intertwined, or as meaning Japanese massage. But traditional Japanese massage is not shiatsu, despite what some of the folks would try to revise history. Amma is a traditional Japanese massage that came from Anmo, which was a traditional Chinese medicine massage, through Korea, where it was called Amma, and landed in Japan. And out of that grew, well, it's even a little more, I don't know how deep in the
Please, because
what
it's
you want to get with the history of shiatsu, but it really didn't get recognized until the 50s and 60s in Japan. That the time I was learning my massage, there were 40 schools of traditional Japanese massage, Amma, in Japan. There was one school of shiatsu, and that was the Namakoshi school. So just to give a little perspective on that. Yeah.
interesting. Please always feel free to explore the history, and especially of these more Eastern approaches, because it is something that I feel contemporary massage education and certainly any sort of mention of massage history neglects these more Eastern-based approaches. Could you give your own brief distinctions between Amma and Shiatsu?
Well, besides having different theoretical foundations, which I've already talked about, the main difference is that shiatsu is just pressing on points. Amma also includes stroking on points. So there's a whole range of techniques that are in Amma that are not in shiatsu. Shiatsu is a simplified form of Amma. I know that'll tilt some heads of people who thought that they were doing traditional Japanese massage when they did shiatsu. And I will say that the Namakoshi folks, I think it's I think the son's still running the ship. He's very old now. I think the grandson who had it had passed away. Anyhow, they did open up the school after the dad died to traditional Chinese medicine theory, but that's not what it was based on. And of course, because the word was seen as covering all of Japanese massage, there were various branches of it, some of which I have probably on the books behind me, the shiatsu books. And there was barefoot shiatsu. There was shiatsu that came out of the macrobiotic tradition. And they all were called shiatsu because that's what people came to know. As a matter of fact, even at the time, I spent a little bit of time in Japan, and even at that moment, most people in Japan thought of Japanese massage as shiatsu. So it got confused, and maybe it doesn't make much difference anymore, except to people like me who actually are interested in the history and the lineages that underlie our work. Now, just to talk a little bit about what I learned, I took a 109-hour course because in California, all that was mostly required at that time was 100 hours of training. So that was my initial training. I, of course, got many, many hours of training when my teacher worked with me before I took over the school. And then he continued to assist me in the first classes that I taught in the school, which consisted of me teaching the class and then listening very carefully to the feedback that he gave to every student. And that's how I learned what I really needed to know. And we developed an approach. I've always felt nervous about my credentials in Japanese massage because I learned so little initially. But it's an amazing. I don't know if you understand the traditional style of Japanese teaching is to demonstrate, not to explain. The explanations are for you to uncover. I talk about it as though, when we give you a kata, a complete Japanese massage, we're giving you the whole onion. And your job is to peel away the layers of onion with every massage that you give, every massage that you receive, every massage that you watch. You can begin to understand the foundations of what are there. There's, of course, much more studying that can be done as well. And you can study, acupuncture, and any number of students that I had in my school went on to acupuncture school and became Chinese medicine professionals. But even at the level that I work at, which is a very basic level of Chinese medicine theory and Japanese massage. I've never gotten to the center of the onion. I'm not sure there is one at this point. Subsequently, I've always known how little I actually know. I always say when I first learned about massage, okay, this is massage, I learned about this much of it. But now I actually know less than I knew then, because what I didn't realize is that this is massage, and I still only know that much. So proportionally, I know less than I did when I started. And I think that's an important understanding, to keep humility in the forefront when you're touching someone. It is an honor to be allowed to exchange touch, because touch is an exchange. Every time I'm touching somebody, they're touching me back. Not to be too far out, but I do consider every massage to be a sacred relationship. And I think that word, relationship, is the fundamental definition of any massage. I call it a structured, touching service relationship. So it's not any type of touch, it's intentional touch, structured. It has training, intention behind it, but it is touch, and it's a relationship, but it's not any type of relationship. It's a service relationship. And we don't have a very clear idea in this culture. We don't explore the subject of service to as much depth as, say, the Japanese culture does. So I always use the example of the tea ceremony, the Japanese tea ceremony, which is another highly structured relationship, sacred, treating the relationship in a very sacred kind of a way, where there's a very formulaic kata for it, kata meaning just a system or form. It sits on top of layers and layers of tradition and history that give meaning to that moment. I sit on top of my training by my teacher, who attended school in Japan and learned Osaka style Japanese massage of the 40 schools. His was one particular one. And that sits on the tradition of Japanese massage, which is 1,200, 1,400 years old, which sits on the tradition of traditional Chinese medicine, which is 4,000 or 5,000 years old or more. So the roots of my giving a 10-minute seated massage go very deep, and I'm humbled, by the depth that exists there, and I try to honor that, not get in the way of it, and communicate it, allow it to be communicated as best I can in one form, one particular form.
What a beautiful way to put that, David. Thank you. Because that's really the core of what the society hopes to keep in the forefront of our minds, is that we have these roots, and what we're doing today, we are standing on the foundation that others laid before us.
Yes.
When you completed your entry-level education, was there a lot of Eastern-based approaches nationally in the United States?
Well, it was emerging, we would say. Certainly in the 60s, mostly in the 70s, we began having the influence of what we'll loosely call the New Age folks involved that were. So, for example, there was a book that I've got on my shelf back here somewhere called Barefoot Doctors. And it was a book that was written for Chinese folks. This is before the industrialization of China happened. And there was a whole category of healthcare professionals called barefoot doctors. They weren't doctors. They didn't go to medical school, but they were schooled in a combination of traditional medicine, herbs and whatnot, and Western theory, the germ theory, and all that underlies Western theory. And they were sent out to the countryside because most of China was countryside at that point, and they provided healthcare services, so including touch, including some massage, to the folks out in spread out through the country. So we had an awareness here. So that's a book that was written in English about that process. There were many of those. The whole yoga influence began back in those days. The whole Buddhist influence, meditation centers began in the 60s and 70s. It was the alternative culture, the counter culture, as we used to say back then. It was a beginning. When I first learned about Asian healthcare and Asian philosophy, which are two of the big cultural gifts that had moved over, I realized that the future of humanity would rest in the merging of worldviews. So everybody has a worldview. Most people don't know that they have a worldview, but everybody has one. And it's given to us by the culture in which we're raised. So the worldview of Western culture has tended to be very left brain, very analytical, very logical, very linear. The worldview of the far Asian cultures tends to be more right-brained. Their alphabet is made up of pictures. That's a right brain engagement, okay, not a left brain engagement. It's the more creative side. It's the side that sees wholes rather than parts of wholes. So when I began studying or learning about Asian culture, I realized, oh my God, the problem with Western culture is that we only have half the worldview. We only encapsulate half the worldview. So bringing the other half in has been a goal of mine in my life, that I want to be able to appreciate multiple perspectives, multiple worldviews. And of course, it's totally opposed to the polarities that we find ourselves in, the black and white polarity that we find ourselves in. One definition of maturity is to be able to hold multiple views, some of which may be contradictory in your brain at the same time. And the folks who can do that, that's a sign of maturity. So it's called aperspectival, not one perspective, but no perspective or all perspectives, and the more perspectives that you can contain, the more content and satisfied you'll be moving through the world. So that's the goal, is to merge left brain, right brain, to merge west, east, into not necessarily a gray, but into a space that allows for integrated personal evolution, personal growth, personal development. Yeah.
If we can talk just briefly, David, about classroom structure for your entry level, based off what you said earlier, was there much explanation given, or was it really more demonstration heavy?
Well, with my teacher, it was mostly demonstration. When I took over the school, I realized I had to speak more to the left brain of students. Okay. So I developed, manuals, handbooks, and I would explain techniques more deeply and pull away, make some of those layers much more obvious to folks. But what I tried to do was develop a style of teaching that was also very integrated, very holistic. We only had one teacher for each class, and that person would teach the Western anatomy, Chinese medicine anatomy, as well as the techniques and theoretical framework underneath it. And they would be expected to know all of that and communicate that to whatever level of understanding the teacher had to the students. And I like that style. It was more of I'm very supportive and very disappointed that the apprenticeship training model never took hold in the United States, and in a few places it did, Hawaii and a couple of other places. But I still have to laugh at the idea that you're qualified to do massage by a certification test that's written. That would never happen for piano. That would never happen for dance. That would never happen for carpentry. That would never happen for electricians. You know, we have a profession that just begs for apprenticeship style organization, and we've never made that happen. And it's been a great disappointment of mine that that's never happened. It's happened in other places. In France, the program that I am affiliated with there, which was the first massage program to ever get recognized by the government as a profession, and it was chair massage that was recognized. Each student had to go through a program that not only a much longer program than 109 hours for one. It was about 160-hour program just to learn chair massage. And their final examination was doing a massage and having it critiqued as well. Makes much more sense to me.
Gotcha.
The other piece, I might as well, since I've mentioned the word already, that we'll get to at some point, I might as well be here. Because of my insecurity about how much I know, I didn't want to be teaching students that would know even less and make their services not safe for the folks that they're working on. Quality control has always been a big issue for me. How do we know? The model that the mainstream massage profession has adopted has been in massage school in 500 or 600 hours. Teach everybody a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then send them out in the world to figure out how to put it all together. To me, that's a little scary. And for the students that many students that I've talked to who've gone through that program, they are a little scared at graduation. The approach that I took to training was the martial arts approach. Here's a kata. Here's a highly choreographed sequence of acupressure points, of Japanese massage techniques, of a system for moving from one part of the body to the other. That is what we call a kata. The word comes from the martial arts. It comes from Japan. You can find it in Japanese flower arranging. You can find it in Japanese calligraphy. A kata is a highly choreographed form of something. In this case, touch, structured touch. That gave me the confidence to be able to train people because even if they didn't know what they were doing, at least they'd know what to do. And I think that's incredibly important. That gives you a lot of confidence. Yes, you're going to continue to peel away the layers and do it better every time you do it. But initially, you can start doing massage with a lot more confidence. I'll never forget I was at a massage school teaching one time, and I sat in on a class with the owner of the school, unnamed school, and a group of graduates who were, and the owner was trying to address this issue of transitioning from school into professional work and taking questions and answering questions and sharing stuff. And at one moment, one question came up about when you're rebooking an appointment or making an initial appointment, on the phone, somebody calls, whatever. How do you handle that? And in the class was somebody who had a successful table massage business. And her answer was, well, make sure you don't give them the time that they asked for initially because you're too busy. And instead, make another time. And everybody kind of nods their head, and the owner of the school kind of nods their head and whatnot. And afterwards, I went up to the owner. I explained something that he didn't seem to understand was that this person's approach to marketing was to lie to their clients. That totally undermines, in my opinion, the whole point of massage, which is to have a trusting relationship in which you can be vulnerable, naked on my table or sitting in my chair or whatever. And I mean, I was horrified. I was just horrified with that particular approach. And so often, even with massage schools, and get into my critique of massage schools, when massage schools transition from the student paying for the training to the government paying for the training, everything shifted at that point, and it became a serious business that where the goal was to just get bodies into the seats in the school. When I was running my school, I created a pamphlet that every prospective student was given that said how to choose a massage school, and it listed the names and phone numbers of all the other schools in the area, along with some advice about what things you might look for, what questions you might ask, and whatnot. We were not only not afraid of competition, we welcomed it because we only wanted students in the school who actually wanted to be there, who were serious about being there.
Right.
Nowadays, schools are filled with people who don't have anything better to do, and the government will pay for part or maybe even all of the tuition. And so they're just there with no kind of fundamental magnetism toward the work that we do. And in fact, in some schools, it's not even required that you have that kind of passion, the fundamental passion for massage. That's all we wanted in our school, and we had fabulous classes as a result of it, and people who went on to do amazing things as a result of it. So it was, again, I mentioned it early on, the monetization of the massage profession had certainly had positive values, but has had a lot of downsides as well.
Talk to me, David, about becoming a school owner, and how long was the Amma Institute around?
So the school ran from the original version of it, Kabuki Shiatsu School, ran for about 3 years, from 1977 through 1980, when I attended. After I had, clocked my first 2,000 table massages, and felt comfortable, and with the encouragement of my teacher, to reopen the school. I had it till from 1982 to about 1989, at which point two things happened. One is that chair massage was taking off with the introduction of the first massage chair in 1986. And by the way, that was introduced at the AMTA convention, and the Council of Schools, that was the name of the group. It was called the Council of Schools in those days. And there was a room set up in a circle with all the tables and chairs in a circle, in a good egalitarian form. And I stood in the middle explaining this crazy contraption that I had, a chair in a box, in a wooden box, and took all the pieces out and assembled it, and worked on Alex Spazoff from Florida, who was representing one of the schools at that time. And from that moment on, that was in Labor Day of 1986, right after the chair had been introduced earlier that year. And within the next 12 months, I had 18 schools that I went to teach a weekend course in chair massage. I pity those poor students because how much I knew was so minimal at that point, and I was trying to teach too much, and we did that for many, many years. But it sparked the interest in chair massage, so that by 1990, 4 years later, most massage schools were at least mentioning, if not having a course in even if it was a few hours, 3 or 4 hours in chair massage. So the 90s, it pretty much exploded, and also many more massage chairs came on the market. I think it took about 2 years for the next chair to be developed and manufactured. And then in the 90s was the big explosion of it, so that, today every massage school teaches about chair massage at this point. Can I ask what school you went to?
I attended Blue Cliff College in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Yeah, okay, right. I believe I taught there. I did teach in Fayetteville, so I don't know how many massage schools there are there.
Before it was Blue Cliff, it was White River.
Yes, that sounds more familiar. Yeah.
Since we're kind of getting closer and closer to the discussion of the invention of the massage chair, 86, that convention was in Seattle for AMTA, right?
Seattle over Labor Day holiday.
Do you have any photographs of your
I do. Yeah,
Right.
there's a few out and around there. Yeah.
Have
I mean,
that.
I can picture the one with Alex Bazoff in the chair.
You mentioned earlier that you felt it was a packaging as in terms of marketing massage at the time. Was that
Right.
kind of a general consensus?
Absolutely not. Hell no. Is it the consensus today? Hell no. We built a profession that's upside down, is the easiest way I can talk about it. We expect our customers to have a graduate level appreciation of massage, of structured touch, without them ever having gone to kindergarten. How many people can afford $100 a week for a massage or $100 a month for a massage? There are only three groups of people that get table massage. The first are the very wealthy, people who can afford it. The second are the very desperate, the people who are in so much pain, and they've heard enough about massage that they give it a try as a way of mediating whatever issue that they have, musculoskeletal issue. And the third group of people are the people who are passionate about it. Those are the only, and into which I put myself. Now, mostly I get to trade for massages, so it doesn't cost me so much on my meager budget that I have, so I can get around that. But the slice proportion of people in the culture who are able to get regular massage is maybe 5%. I mean, I did this figuring at one point a decade or two ago, based on statistics that came from the AMTA and the ABMP, of which I'm a member of both, by the way. Even though the population has grown, the number of people who get massage the proportion has really not grown that much in 40 years, ever since the contemporary massage profession was born in the mid 80s. And there's still not this recognition that something's wrong here. And what's wrong is simple. We don't have kindergarten. We don't have a place to send people to kindergarten until chair massage came along. And chair massage doesn't pretend, at least in my world, it doesn't pretend to be massage therapy.
Okay.
It just pretends to be massage. Remember that distinction that was made by the AMTA. I don't call myself a massage therapist. I call myself a massage practitioner. I call myself a chair massage specialist, but I'm definitely not doing therapy. So what should have happened, and again, it's all timing, when in the 80s, the move began to create model legislation for states to regulate massage. What should have happened was there should have been a space for chair massage in that. The only people I can train in chair massage in the United States are people who've been through 500 or 600 or more hours of table massage training.
Sure.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. There's no place else in the world, literally, the United States and some provinces in Canada are the only places in the world where you have to learn table massage before you can learn chair massage. It makes absolutely no sense. So it makes no sense for the customer, and it makes no sense for the practitioner. We require people to spend $10,000, $12,000 or more to learn before they can do chair massage. That's ridiculous. Okay. And the way that regulation should have been built, because nobody mistakes chair massage for prostitution. You have to have a pretty good imagination to figure that out, to make that connection. It isn't in a private, doesn't need to be in a private room. It doesn't require any nudity. There are no oils, that you need to have. And matter of fact, it thrives best out in the open. It thrives when it can be seen, because that's the best way to market chair massage as well, is to allow it to be seen. Right. So when you're talking about public events for massage, chair massage is always there. It's the obvious first step for people to move up the ladder of structured touch. How many people get Rolfed? An even smaller slice. How many people get the Traeger experience? An even smaller slice. How many people get those are all techniques that require a high degree of appreciation for the power of structured touch. Sitting down in a chair requires very little appreciation. And I can guarantee, and we do guarantee, you don't have to pay me if you don't feel better. Whatever that means to you, sitting down in the chair, if you don't feel better than when you sat down in the chair, you don't have to pay me. That's how confident I am about the value of positive touch and of chair massage. And that's all. That's the best guarantee you can give. Nobody else gives that. You don't get that guarantee from your restaurant or your doctor or your movie theater or whatever else, but we give a money back guarantee that you will feel better. And it turns out that that's all most people want. So I had a retail chair massage facility in downtown San Francisco, and everybody would walk through the front door with a complaint. It's the first thing. That's what brings them there. The first time, I've got a headache, I've got, a shoulder problem, I throw out my back, my typing, whatever, my arms, all that. So the first thing we'd have to do is just to educate them. We're not here to resolve that problem. That's the job of a professional therapist. But what we can do is we can enhance circulation. We can, so that your own self-healing mechanisms will have a chance to work. That was the first way that we modeled the discussion. And we guarantee, whether your headache goes away or not, you'll feel better. Even knowing that 9 times out of 10, their headache would go away. But we would never say to them that 9 times out of 10, your headache will go away, because that was not our intention.
Okay.
So they had a set of expectations walking in, and we had a set of intentions. And the first job we had was to make sure that they're on the same level as our intentions.
Yeah.
Because if their expectations were higher than our intentions, they would be disappointed.
Sure.
So basic marketing. That's why, I also pay a lot of attention to business and marketing. The hardest thing was to teach practitioners that.
Yeah.
Particular practitioners that had a self-identity as being a massage therapist. And it is still today, because most people with all that training, I've got a lot of hammers and I want to use them all. And we say, no, here's a kata. If you do this kata, we can guarantee that people will feel better. If you do whatever you're doing, that you learned in massage school, we don't know. We can't make any guarantees. So we brought quality control into the system. The basic quality control for almost every massage business is the satisfaction of the customers. That's too late from my point of view. It's like, I want to, when I sit down in a chair and somebody performs one of the katas on me, I can tell they're on the point or they're not on the point. They're understanding the pressure or they're not understanding the pressure. They've got the technique down or they don't have the technique down. And instead of learning many things like you do in massage school, we're doing the Jack Palance version of education. I don't know if you remember who he was. He was in a movie. He was very famous for doing one-armed push-ups when he won an Academy Award on stage. And he was in a movie with Billy Crystal, who you may be more familiar with, in a where he played. Billy Crystal was a dude on this guy's ranch, so it was a vacation thing, and Billy Crystal was having midlife crises of all sorts, and couldn't figure his life out. And Jack Palance, they're both sitting in the saddles riding the horse, and Jack Palance says to him, "You want to know the secret of life?" And Billy Crystal goes, "Yeah, of course I want to know the secret to life." And he says, "This is the secret to life." And Billy Crystal goes, "What? A finger? That's your secret?" And he says, "Just do one thing." Okay. So that's a very Eastern idea about moving through the world. It's the idea of live a life of mastery. In the West, we think more is better.
Right.
We live a very linear type of understanding of education. A life of mastery is one that goes for depth, not breadth. And that's the approach that we've always taken. And it's totally unique. Nobody else in the massage profession does that. Matter of fact, we get criticized McDonald's of massage and I mean, we get criticized all the time. But what have we done? We've built in quality control. We've created a framework that's safe for not just the customer, but also for the practitioner, where they can something that has 5,000 years of history that it sits on top of. And so you can, with confidence, perform this massage and know that it will do some good. It will make the world a little bit better place. The massage profession, by regulating massage at a level of massage therapy, I've always said it's too much and it's too little. For a massage therapist, I'm more impressed with the 1,000 hours that are required in 1 to 2,000 hours that are required in the provinces. British Columbia requires 2,000 hours approximately. Ontario requires 1,000 hours of training. I'm more impressed with that, and yeah, you can call yourself a massage therapist, than I am with 500 hours or 600 hours. So in one sense, it's too little. In the other sense, it's too much, because you don't need 600 hours to do a chair massage. I mean, I love chair massage. I know it backwards and forwards, but you don't need 600 hours to create a world-class chair massage practitioner. You can start at 109 hours or 160 hours or something less. I mean, if I was writing regulation, I'd probably put schools at somewhere around 150-hour level to teach chair massage. If that was what people were going from zero to chair massage, I'd say 150 hours would be a good place to set the pace, so that you can learn, about many different lengths, anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. You don't want a chair massage that's more than 30 minutes because people can't move sitting in a chair. They can move on a table, they can shift and they turn over and da-da-da-da. But in a chair, you're locked into place. So just physiologically, it's problematic to keep your knees up and bent over and your head down like that. So we say 30 minutes is the max, typically. Yeah. So I've got, the whole issue of regulation has always been problematic for me because we got left behind. And it wasn't the fault of the massage professions. It was really chair massage came online a little bit too late. And I didn't tell you the other reason that I left my massage school. I mentioned that there are two reasons. The second reason was because my partner got sick in 1989, and 3 years later he passed away. So I didn't have the bandwidth to do more than chair massage. So I gave up the school to one of my students who ran it through most of the 90s until he got too busy with his side chair massage business, and he had to decide, and he chose his chair massage business over the school. So he shut the school down. And by that time, small schools were not the norm. The norm was for schools with the ability to collect the money from the government in terms of loans or grants, that was becoming the norm. And then alongside that, eventually, not right away, but eventually came the training programs that were located in junior colleges, and they were free or mostly free. So there was that dynamic that was going on as well.
Okay. Let me ask you, David, because I did review the History Channel segment that they did on chair massage and highly recommend that for other people. First of all, tell me, how did that even come about? How did the History Channel program approach you or get interested in talking about chair massage?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, they had this program called, what was it called? Something about, Millionaire Geniuses was the name of the program. So every time I show that clip in class or whatever, I have to emphasize the fact that I'm neither of those. But that was the name of the program, and it featured innovative inventions that changed, that were successful and changed some corner of the world. And I'm not sure how they found out about me. They probably just researched the massage chair. Somebody had gotten a chair massage, and that's generally how things work. And then, hey, I wonder where this came from, and how did this develop? And then, they came to my doorstep with that. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that process of working with the History Channel?
It was a surprise to me. I learned what a director really does. A director directs. And if he doesn't like a particular take, he asks you to do it over again until he gets what he wants, because he's got an idea in his head. It was really quite a wonderful experience, and the director was excellent. And how he put the program together in its final form was pretty amazing. I mean, he did a really good job of bringing out the pieces that were important to me about the profession, and the role of touch in the world as well, and why this particular approach had so many legs underneath it. Had moved so quickly through the culture, to the point where I think some momentum was lost during COVID. Okay, so there's a 3-year period where people weren't getting chair massage in the malls, or the airports, or the most public places that chair massage arose. But they were still getting chair massage in the workplace. So the more less public places, chair massage was still happening. But it was definitely, it dropped the momentum a bit. And I don't think it's recovered yet, because malls haven't recovered yet from the COVID crisis. So I'm just watching it. With great interest as to where it will go. The process of filming stuff, finding a good place to film in San Francisco, and then doing indoors and outdoors was very cute and a lot of fun to do. I think it was only a 2-day shoot. I was very happy that they managed to go to France and interview the co-creator of the massage chair, who is a French cabinet maker that lived in San Francisco at the time, who somehow we got connected together. He was a furniture maker, so he really understood how to put wood together. And the story that's related on the video is absolutely accurate, and he's featured in that section as well. I feel bad that from a design standpoint, never got the credit, and I'm hoping that someday, the Smithsonian will be interested in putting the original chair in their collection, and he'll get the credit that he deserves. So just to be clear about my language, I say I developed the first massage chair. Technically, it was 3 people who invented it. Myself, who had the initial idea, Serge, who made the initial prototypes, and Jim Everett, who was the owner of Living Earth Crafts, a table manufacturer at that time, who took a big leap, because how do you know if something as crazy as my idea would take off and there was a market for it? And he didn't know, but he had an instinct about it and he ran with it. And so he developed the assembly line versions, the manufacturing versions of the first chair, which we call a chair in the box. And if you haven't seen a chair in a box, go view that video. There's a link to it on my homepage, touchpro.com. And it's well worth 13 minutes of your time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was really good. I know I had seen it before, but going back and watching it, preparing for this interview, more layers were peeled back, I think, for me. I want to know, David, do you remember where you were when you first had this concept and how it came to you? And because it is a paradigm shift, like you
Yeah.
talked about, you didn't know really that something innovative was happening, right?
Well, I did and I didn't. I knew, and I had total confidence in the chair because I had had 4 years of experience doing seated massage on drummer stools. So I knew that the concept of seated massage was, it's like I was explain to people, if you're at a dinner party and somebody, friends, people, and somebody offered to come up behind you after dessert and rub your shoulders, would you say no? And most people is like, no, of course I, want people to rub my shoulders because instinctively I know that will feel good. Okay.
Right.
That's all this is. We're just doing a structured version of rubbing your shoulders that happens to cover your whole upper body. And we know, having done it with people sat on a stool, that the concept I knew was absolutely going to be, I had no doubt that it was going to take off. I never doubted it. I had many people in the massage profession doubting it. People saying, you can't call that massage. Literally. People who'd been in other massage schools or, professional, the profession for a long time, you can't call that massage. I'm sorry. That is not massage. Massage is done on a table with oils and covering the whole body. So yes, of course, there it was a paradigm shift, and because it was a paradigm shift, there were definitely pushback, but I never had any doubt about it because I saw what the problem was. I identified the problem early on in my teaching career as being a packaging problem. People love to get their shoulders rubbed. Everybody loves to get their shoulders rubbed. And that's all this is. This is just an extended version of it. And I had never had any doubt.
Yeah, I think it's important for someone who came into this profession after chair massage. You can split it up: a world before chair massage, a world after chair massage. For someone who has only known a world where chair massage is a part of entry-level education, part of continuing education, it was important for me to recognize what was before. Like you talk about having the drummer stool, and you're literally holding on to the to
Right.
provide massage and stability. So
Yeah.
this idea of an actual massage or a chair that's actually designed for massage, yeah, just revolutionary stuff, David. Can you identify where that came from? And this collaboration that you had with Serge and Everett.
Yeah, so I mean, both of my parents were raised on farms, which mean that they both had an entrepreneurial sense about them, raised on farms in North Dakota. And farmers, if you don't have the right tool, you make it. It's just built into the genealogy of farmers. And I credit, my upbringing for being able to think outside the box often. If you have a problem, you just solve it. You don't that I'm just going to live with it. It's something that I'll have to live with for the rest of my life. No, no. If you have a problem, you find a solution for it. So I've been a problem solver all my life. And I did identify a problem, which was massage people graduating from massage school, 5 years after they left, were the only people they were massaging were their friends and family. And nowadays, and I think that's still true nowadays to a great extent, and they've got a $12,000 loan to repay at the same time. So that's the profile of what happens in the massage profession. I knew that was crazy. And from an integrity point of view, I could not train people. I couldn't have a massage school to train people that I knew would be fruitless. Now, some schools make the argument that, well, they're, it's personal development. They're paying for personal development as well. No, they're not. When they get the sales pitch that sounds like it came off the back of a matchbook. They used to be advertising in the insides of matchbooks, and that's where you find these claims. When massage schools would claim that you can make $60 an hour after graduation, it's like, that's bull pucky. Of course you can't. Maybe eventually you can, but that requires pretty much a private practice. I only know there's very few spas. There are some spas that I've been to in places like Hawaii, the resorts, big resorts, where the practitioners actually do make $60 an hour doing massage. But that is so rare. And more often what happens is people make $20 an hour working at Massage Envy or another place like that. $20 an hour. I mean, nowadays, hopefully it's more than that nowadays, because the culture has changed since I last looked. In the past 15 years, in some ways, everything's changed. And so I haven't really examined, how much people are making. But 15 years ago, if you were making $20 an hour, that's not bad. And it was really good if you had kids at home, that you required a flexible schedule. I mean, I think Massage Envy is just amazing. I think they've done an incredible service to the massage profession that had no entry level place for massage practitioners to start after they graduated from massage school. Massage Envy and their, imitators, of which there are many now, gave a first rung on the professional ladder. When you graduate from massage school, you don't know massage. There's no way you know massage. You only can learn massage by doing massage. And your first 1,000 massages are where you learn how to do massage. Well, if there's no place that will employ you to do those first 1,000 massages, you'll get discouraged, and you'll not be that good. Having a private practice requires a third skill that is not developed in massage school. So, if you're an employee, all you need to know is to do how to do massage, and massage schools are pretty good at that. Some of the schools give a basic business training. So maybe you can be an independent contractor working in somebody else's business, like a hair salon or chiropractor's office or whatever. You're still doing your own books. Your business, it is a business, but it's a minimal business. If you're doing a private practice, you need not only skill number 1 and skill number 2, but you need skill number 3, which is called marketing. And marketing is the one skill that's only nodded to in massage school. So the training that you have when you finish is really mostly employee level training. And there weren't jobs, there weren't employee jobs. I mean, I went to an employee situation because it was a spa in San Francisco, a unique place, Japanese spa, urban spa, and one of the first. And I was an employee, but that was rare. That was very rare. Most of the people in my graduating class didn't end up at Kabuki Hot Spring. And so it's another piece that the profession has always had a struggle with, figuring out its own identity. I, of course, believe that you should just tell everybody the truth at the beginning, but that's just me.
Right. We were talking about creating a paradigm shift, and what chair massage looked like before, what chair massage looks after this work that you did. Talk to me about how the initial reaction was. It sounded like you had some naysayers. Was it something that once you actually had the first prototype of the chair massage and you were presenting at conventions, was it pretty much an easy takeoff from there?
You've hit the nail on the head. So what the chair was not just more comfort for the receiver and the giver, the practitioner, and it changed that level of comfort dramatically for both of those. But the real most important part of the massage chair was that it was a physical object, so that when you talked about it, you could have something physical for people to look at, experience, understand, see pictures of. It is the chair that really built the chair massage portion of the massage industry, and it was because it was concrete. We used to work sometimes, in San Francisco. We'd work anywhere in the early days. We'd do these, like a street fair kind of situation, and we'd set up our chair. Technically, what we were doing was absolutely illegal in under San Francisco regulations at that time. But the cops would come by, look at us. They wouldn't, the idea that they would even call it massage never entered their mind. This was something completely unique and different. So it didn't even fall into the massage category for a lot of people in the general public, which was great, in the sense that in those days, massage was a word that implied adult entertainment. And that's what the police officers were looking for. That's how they had it in their mind. And there was no way that this could be interpreted as adult entertainment. So it created a new category in people's minds. And it was the chair that really did that, because it made it look real, professional. I mean, if you have a chair, for goodness sake, this a contraption that's manufactured, well, this must be real. This is more than just somebody's whim. Yeah, it was the game changer. And as soon as the chair was introduced to the massage schools ran with it, and it took off. Yeah, from that point. Yeah.
I wonder, because we don't see things like this very often, David. I wonder what's it like to work on something like that, to work on something like that, to work on something like that, and then for it to kind of not be yours anymore in a sense, because the schools are also latching onto it and perhaps doing their own spin on it.
Yeah.
What's it like to see something like that you worked so hard on kind of go on and take on this whole different meaning with myriads of different people?
Yeah, there are many flavors of chair massage now. I'm certainly not in control of the chair massage profession by any stretch of the imagination, and the only claim to fame I have is a conceptual one, that saw the possibilities and ran with it and created the chair, and then from there, the world took it on as their own. As a matter of fact, at the beginning, when I was teaching at these massage schools, I was teaching with the intention of, okay, I'll come in once, teach it, and then you'll run with it on their own. And some schools did do that, exactly. But I have a perfectionist part as well. So I know how something can be better. There are gradations of utility. So on one level, any positive touch, I will root for in my book. If you give me a massage, and I don't care what type of massage it is, you will find a happy customer unless you hurt me. That's the only dividing line. I love to get positive touch. And I'm from the West Coast, so I'm a hugger too. That's one way that I get it. That's ground floor. This is all about touch for me. This is it's a structured touching relationship. And then moving up, I've seen people, if you give a 5-minute chair massage, and we teach a 5-minute chair massage, that can change somebody's life in 5 minutes, who's never had massage before, who's never experienced the value of structured touch. If you continue to mine the depths of what chair massage has to offer, you'll also begin to understand that and now we know for the first time, where 20 years ago we didn't know, why people feel better. We would assume that people assumed that getting a massage would make you feel better. Matter of fact, when we first marketed it, we marketed it as hands-on stress reduction, because people think of massage naturally as good massage, professional massage, as being a way to reduce stress. We didn't know that when somebody experiences positive touch, their brains get flooded with oxytocin. Okay, we didn't know that, and that the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. We didn't know that. Yeah. And I have a theory, unproven, that the right brain gets stimulated, gets woken up. Even though we mostly live in our left brains, my perception of the effect of massage is that and my personal experience is that the right brain gets activated, which is why after a massage, people end up with, massage mind. They forget their glasses, they forget their watch, they forget their, wallet. They kind of, are disoriented, because it takes about 5 minutes for the corpus callosum to reestablish communication with the right brain at the same time. The left brain is where spirituality is manifest, where the unitary consciousness, where the God experience, where God is experienced, is through the right brain, not the left brain. And now we know that, now we know that physiologically what goes on when you receive positive touch is pretty dramatic. Having that consciousness and bringing that consciousness to your chair massage also changes it. Bringing the wider the understanding is, the deeper the understanding is of what it is that you're doing, the more impact the massage will have. Now, if I'm just rubbing shoulders and doing it in a positive way, which means that it's with the permission of the person who's receiving it, which means that they've understand that anytime during the massage, if anything, or during the touch session, if anything feels uncomfortable, they can let me know, which means that at the end of that, there's an acknowledgement that something has occurred. We do that in our kata by saying thank you. The practitioner thanks the receiver at the end of every massage. So those are the only 3 things you need for positive touch. You need permission, you need feedback, and you need acknowledgement. As long as those are in place, it's going to be a positive touch experience, and the physiological impact will be pretty predictable. It's why we know that we can guarantee that if you receive this massage, you will feel better. And there have been, I can count on one hand when I had the retail shop, the number of times that people asked for their money back. Matter of fact, I can count to 3 for that. And it was because there was a misunderstanding between expectations and intention that wasn't clarified. Yeah.
Got to manage those expectations.
Absolutely.
I would like to shift gears, if we can, to talk a little bit about this new stage that it sounds like you're in, of where you're doing some look back and some archival work.
Yeah.
Maybe I can start off with a question. What is the importance of preserving history, and perhaps more specifically massage history?
We live in a time where the pace of change is 1,000x, 1,000 times what it was when my mother was born in 1922. She saw a lot of change in her life, but it's infinitesimal amount compared to what the flow of information that people get every day. into their lives. When I was a lot younger, I began to understand, and this is partly because of examining the Eastern worldview, that change is the way of the world. So one of the books that I studied and learned from one of my teachers was the I Ching, which is one of, if not the oldest book in the world, Chinese book, and it's called the Book of Changes. And all it is just looking at the various kinds of change. It enumerates 64 different kinds of change and then enumerates how any one of those can turn into any other kind of change, transition. It was at that moment when I began studying that, I really began to inhabit a lifestyle of embracing change rather than striving for stability. From one point of view, you can see my life, and some of my relatives do, as very chaotic. But I'm basically a very simple person, and I like to keep things simple and unadorned. I haven't made, $1 million from chair massage. Any money that I've had, I've reinvested according to my investment strategy, which is a very simple one. The first thing to invest in is your health, because if you don't have your health, it doesn't matter how many millions or billions these days you have. If you don't have your health, you'll be miserable. So invest in good food, invest in yoga, invest in massage, invest in healthy relationships, because that's what will keep you afloat and able to move forward. And the second thing to invest in is relationships. We are Homo sapiens. We're relational people. Each one of us is unique, and each one of us is exactly the same as everybody else. And those are the two yin-yang polarities that turn into each other throughout our lives. Relationships are extraordinarily important. The quality of your relationships is very important as well. So invest in relationships, especially, people at my age. Invest in relationships with people who are younger than you, so they'll outlive you. You'll have somebody to talk to in your elder years. I'm 76 now, and and I'll keep getting older. So I treasure relationships with younger folks as well. And, and there are many ways. Invest in community is another way to say it. So if you find yourself as a part of a community, make sure you spend time with that. And the third thing to invest in is skills, because people won't want to hang around you if you're boring. And investing in skills is a great way to keep your passion up at the surface. Like I said, I'm not so good with delayed gratification. I like to embrace the things that make me feel good. And I believe in a life of joy, not a life of misery. And I know how privileged I am. I constantly remind myself that, being white, male, middle class, living in the United States, I'm one of the most privileged people on the face of the earth, even without having any money. I'm extraordinarily privileged. So what I can give back through skills building, I am a little bit of a tech nerd, as well as a massage nerd. I'm a generalist. I'm not so much, I do have one thing that centers my life, and I've been privileged enough to be able to execute on ideas that I've had because I've had enough education, because I've had a wide enough scope of possibilities. My possibilities have been pretty much unlimited. Most people can't say that in this world. And so, I feel an obligation to get good at one thing. Most people don't understand that life is really a circle, not a straight line. It's a circle, and no matter where you start on the circle, or a ball, you can imagine it as a ball. Everybody may start out of the periphery, but everybody's moving toward some center of truth, beauty, and goodness. If you consciously do that, you're living a life of mastery. And it turns out the closer you get to the center point, the more you have in common with all the other people, no matter where they started, as laborers, as tech workers, as meditators, as family people, whatever it is. But living a life of mastery is a life of joy. It's a life of richness, ever-growing richness. I've never been rich. I don't have any money. When I need money, it appears. My financial parts are paying attention to it. I've always put whatever money I have received back into my entrepreneurial endeavors. So I kept the retail place in San Francisco open for a year or two much longer than I should have, because what closed it down was the 2008 recession. But I will invest in my business, because I know that through experience, I just know that it will support me in the future if I'm willing to jump off the high dive. And I do that just about every day. I live a very exciting life that nobody else would think is exciting except me, because I've got a very rich interior, and I've been blessed with having exterior engagement that has been extraordinarily fulfilling for me as well. And so I'm archiving that. I'm archiving the journey. Every day to me is an adventure. Every day I learn something new, and I couldn't be more excited. Of course, you're very excited at the high points. Like launching the massage chair, of course, was very exciting. I always try to find middle way, knowing that, just because the horse was stolen in the Chinese, proverb, it may be a good thing, so that you didn't ride the next day and fall off, or be put in the military service or whatever. There's everything that happens, you have no idea of what its impact is going to be. But I was fortunate enough when I was very young to find a place inside of me, that an unconscious part most of the time, that created a feeling of whether I was on the path or not on the path. And so my goal in life is always to stay on the path and to notice when I'm deviating from it. It's kind of a Mother Teresa point of view. I saw a documentary that was done about her. I came away from it thinking that she had three ideas. The first was that life is about service, about leaving, this is my Boy Scout training too, leaving the campground a little better than you found it. Not as good as you found it, but making it a little bit better than you found it, a life of service. The second thing that I understood her to say is that everybody has a particular path of service to live in their life. And third, your job is to find that path and to walk it with love in your heart and joy in your engagement with it. And I think that's a pretty good philosophy of life. I'm happy with that, and it's gotten me through, the past 50 some odd years since high school, 60 years, in a very enriched space.
Right on. So talk to me a little bit about this archival project that you're on, David. And what do you foresee? Like, are you working towards perhaps a memoir? Are you just documenting the collection that you have? I'm assuming that you're working with a personal collection that you have.
Yeah, so that's why my apartment is filled with file cabinets. Yeah, I do have a lot of material. The initial form that it's taking is documenting the chair massage that we've been teaching since 1986, the kata that we've been teaching since 1986, and that people have been teaching in various forms, some with my permission and some without. I don't care. but I want to have a space online that will catalog for people who want to learn the kata, people who want to improve the kata, fine-tune the kata, people who want to teach the kata. So right now, I'm working on that piece of it. It will be a website. It will. There is an online training right now of the work that's built on the handouts that people would typically get in a seminar, video and audio and written handouts. So it will be that, but it'll be in a much more coherent order. It will start with the first rung will be people learning just a 5-minute, highly simplified version of a seated massage that can be done without a massage chair. And the first 3 or 4 lessons will probably be without a massage chair. And then if you're interested in moving toward a more professional piece of it, then you would have to get a massage chair, and then we would offer more complete versions of the kata, and eventually there'll probably be demonstrations of 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute, and 25 and 30-minute versions of the kata. And eventually we also teach a knee to toe kata, a leg kata. If you turn the person around in the massage chair, if it's a chair that you're able to do that in, you can also give a leg kata as well. And that's what we sold at the retail outlet that I had in San Francisco. So that's what we're working on first. At the same time, I'll begin collecting and sorting out my writings. I've done a lot of writing, a lot of which is on the website, but there's a lot that's not actually on the website as well. And I will be pulling it together into various books with the help of ChatGPT, probably. And I'm a big, ChatGPT is my new sidekick. It's amazing, and I can talk with you about all the dangers of AI and blah 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 blah. But it's an amazing tool that I use constantly throughout the day. And I asked it to help me write a book, and it was amazing what it gave back to me, outlines and whatnot. I'll also mention that one of the books in my that I'd like to see written didn't need to be written by me. I've been talking about it for the past 40 years, hoping that somebody else would write the book, is a textbook on touch for the massage profession. It doesn't exist. There are books that mention touch, and of course every textbook, full complete textbook does, but not in a comprehensive kind of a way, that deals with the subjective, objective, collective aspects of what touch in culture means. I say, for example, tell people that every time somebody sits down in a massage chair or lays down on a table, that they bring a lot of touch history with them. They bring a genetic relationship to touch. They bring a familial relationship to touch, and they bring a cultural relationship to touch. And you could add a fourth and just call it their personal experience of touch, positive or negative. You don't know any of that when somebody sits down in your chair. If you don't understand that those are things that you need to be aware of, could be in the possible experience of somebody that you're touching, then you don't have a complete enough intention of what it is that your touch is all about, that your profession is all about. So a textbook on touch for the massage profession is, I've waited long enough. I don't think anybody else is going to do it. I do have a lot more time now, and it's one of the projects that's now actively percolating on Burden. So the archiving will take many forms. I hope that it will leave a trail of breadcrumbs that people can follow back to the origins of chair massage, seated massage, which were not with me, by the way. People have been getting massaged in seated positions for thousands of years. I'm just the part of the latest iteration of that in contemporary times. And so we want to acknowledge, of course, that this goes way back. I often say that touch is the second oldest profession in the world, oftentimes confused with the first oldest profession in the world. So it goes a long ways back, and we need to be able to acknowledge that and speak that as part of the truth of what it is that our work is all about.
What an exciting time, I think, David.
Yeah.
Is this the first time? I assume also working with the History Channel was also a period of reflection and look back at this story. Is this different, or is this like really the first time that you sat down and looked back at it?
Well, it's the first time I really had the opportunity to do that. I moved from San Francisco to Connecticut to be with my mom, as I said. And so I was a caregiver for 9 years. And since she passed away, my frame of reference and possibilities has opened up. And I'm older. I'm living off of Social Security. I'm in a very safe community here. I've got a lot of support from family and friends. I can do anything I want. Well, what's the thing that only I can do? The thing that only I can do is archive the history of chair massage in general, and TouchPro in particular, and my life in even more refined versions. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Seems like good work to be doing when you're my age.
I think so.
Keep me busy enough for the next 25 years. The 25 years after that, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, you got time to plan for that too.
I got time to plan for that one too. Yeah.
Let me ask you, David, perhaps this is a silly question, but maybe you have an answer that I'm not anticipating. What are you most proud of?
Oh, golly, you're going to make me emotional. I have a daughter who adopted me. I was with her mother, and her mother didn't have a partner to go with her pregnancy. And so I stepped in over 50 years ago. I was there when she was delivered at home in a basement in Chicago. She and her mom lived with me in a house that we were living in at the time. And then I moved out to San Francisco. Actually, they moved out to Portland, but then ended up back in Chicago. And I've been connected with her and her mother all my life. And I feel very grateful because I didn't expect, between being gay and also being an entrepreneur, you say no to a lot of things when you really commit yourself to that path of creativity and artistry. And to have that level of family in my life. I come from a wonderful family. I come from a family of 6 kids and 2 wonderful parents, and all the siblings love each other very much. But I didn't expect to be part of another family that went beyond me and will continue beyond me, far beyond me. And I'm very proud of the fact that I stepped up at that moment, and the blessings that have that has offered have left me in awe and deep appreciation. I also have 2 granddaughters now too, so that's what I'm most proud of. On a creative level, of course, it's the chair massage that again, I was the right person at the right time. There's no, you know, it's not, the circumstances all have to come together. The universe, puts a lot of stuff in motion, and when it comes together in your life and you're able to recognize it, the confluence of forces that allow something new. I'm just grateful that Serge was there, that the school was there, that my teacher was there, that the thousands of people who preceded him were there, that profession was at a good moment in time when it could receive this. The focus of chair massage is on accessibility. The choice that the mainstream massage community made in the 80s was to focus on acceptability. And that's why it attempted to turn massage into a healthcare profession, and still is. There are parts of the profession that still see it as primarily being healthcare. And the culture has moved closer to that being true as it moves from a paradigm of treatment toward a paradigm of prevention. Now, massage works in both worlds. You've got massage therapy and you've got relaxation massage. And the function of relaxation massage for me is simply to prevent little problems from becoming big problems. Okay, so that's prevention. And we work well in both arenas. The confusion in the massage industry has been that we thought that the whole purpose needed to be making massage acceptable to the healthcare profession. So number one, we would have the onus of adult entertainment removed from the work. And number two, so that somebody else could pay for it because we knew it was too expensive. Those were the two struggles that we were dealing with in the 1980s. Turning massage into massage therapy addressed the first one and has done a very good job of doing it. It's made massage far more acceptable to the general culture. And the snide remarks that we used to hear when we said the word massage in the 1980s has pretty much dissipated. People know that there are different kinds of massage, some more respectable than others. The massage profession never solved the problem of the money, of financing. The mainstream massage profession never solved that. Chair massage is focused on accessibility as its primary goal in terms of moving massage into the culture. The mainstream massage profession never did that. They talked to it, but again, the price point is way too high in the United States for massage to be considered accessible on a regular basis to most people. If we can begin to make the case, I've been trying to make it for 40 years, that there should be a regulatory space for chair massage, that could all change. Chair massage is the feeder, the way that you create table massage clients. You introduce them in a safe, convenient, and affordable way to the value of structured touch. And once they experience it, they will be hooked. You can get a chair massage on a regular basis without it breaking the bank. And I saw it many times working in the financial district of downtown San Francisco, and the regularity with which clients would come back to receive just a chair massage, just a 10 or a 20-minute chair massage once a week. And it changed their lives. And I can tell you stories after stories after stories about how that happens. Massage is revolutionary. Touch is revolutionary. And if you just imagined your last massage and how it felt to you and gave everybody in the United States the same sensation, the ability to have the same sensation created, we would have a completely transformed culture within a year. Our workplaces would be transformed. Schools would be transformed. I believe in child-to-child massage, and I've written about that. Our government would be transformed. it would be a world that would make space, a lot of space for everybody to relate in positive, healthy, productive kinds of ways. So I'm a true believer. You're talking to one of those guys. The power of touch. That's what I think will change the world. And it doesn't change it through talk. People try to argue with each other and they get nowhere because they have different worldviews. Touch is a universal language. It's a basic language. It's the language that other mammalian and non-mammalian ancestors used for communication. It is so fundamental to the ability to be a social being that the restriction or elimination or the negative gloss that's put on touch is totally detrimental to a healthy society. Unfortunately, I don't hear the massage profession talking about that and acting on that in the way of making massage accessible as I'd like to. But I'm an eternal optimist, and I've got another 25 years, hopefully, to help turn things around.
David, let me ask you as we come into some closing thoughts, is there anything we haven't talked about or anything I haven't asked that we should talk about or that I should ask now?
I think I've gotten on most of my hobby horses. Yeah, no, I think we've covered. This has been an amazing interview and an amazing look back and reflection and an amazing consolidation of the work that I've been doing and that I hope to continue doing. I always invite, further connection, further communication. If this interview inspires any folks, I'm at dp.touchpro.com, and you're welcome to drop me a note. I'd be happy to share whatever, bits of information, direction, wisdom that I have with anybody.
Excellent. Last couple of questions, David. If you could record and preserve any deceased person's account of massage history, who would you choose?
Oh boy, that's a good question. The folks somebody, and I'm not sure who this would be. I've got a couple people in mind. My teacher, for one, from the Eastern point of view, and I've got another person in mind who was also schooled in the Amma tradition in Japanese massage, and I think that would be of great. Love to sit down with somebody who lived through or knew the details of that moment after World War II when traditional massage was outlawed in Japan by the United States, and how they talk about the suicides among the people who did massage, because it was mostly blind or visually impaired people who did massage in those days, and they were left without a profession. I'd love to hear somebody who actually knew that whole history talk about it, and I would record that for sure. In the West, well, I still put my friend Irene Smith on a pedestal, and I still hope to spread her depth of understanding about touch as the fundamental skill of massage. It's not technique, it's not fixing something. She understood to a great depth the nature of the touch relationship. So her specialty was working with the seriously ill and dying. She never got credit enough for that because she didn't write a book about it. But many people who came after her and students of hers did write books about it. And she was just an incredibly gifted teacher. And I think that if I can have any hand in helping to spread her history around, I would definitely love to be doing that as well.
Can I ask a perhaps selfish question? How did you cross paths with Irene?
It was at that birthday party. I had known about her because a friend of mine, Ken Bridgman, who was involved in the AMTA, deeply involved in it, and I think still is in San Francisco. He was on her board of directors, and he was a friend of mine, and so I'd heard about her through him, and when I was looking for a place to donate the money from the roast, birthday roast, I wanted to give it to a place that had something to do with massage, something to do with touch. And she was the obvious choice because she was brilliant. And her lineage, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, being her mentor, who I got to meet one time in the hospital. Irene sent me to meet her, and that's a whole nother story. It's a great story, but it's a whole nother conversation. She grew up comfortably and in with surrounded by a little bit of fame. And after high school, she followed a path that took her into drugs, alcohol, and prostitution. And out of that, she met Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who pretty much saved her and helped point her in a direction where she could use massage outside of massage parlors for a different kind of helping. And that's what took her to the AIDS ward in San Francisco General Hospital. And the rest from there is a beautiful story. So yeah, her work, I think she's another icon that is an unsung hero of our profession. And her focus on the relationship that we know as touch and understanding it to great depth was just nothing short of brilliant in my mind. I've got on my wall a poster. She was the first recipient of, I don't know if you're familiar with the National AIDS Grove in San Francisco. It's the only nationally recognized monument to the AIDS crisis. And it's in Golden Gate Park, and it's a grove. And Nancy Pelosi helped get it recognized as a national monument to that time. And Irene was the recipient of the first service award that they ever gave. So, yeah, she's a very special person. I make everything personal, don't I?
No, I love that, and thank you for sharing parts of her story, David. Because yeah, unsung for sure. Because
Yeah.
I don't believe it's ringing bells with me. So I've got
Yeah.
some learning to do myself, right? Let me ask you the flip side of that question. Who would you encourage or challenge to be in this podcast's future episodes?
Oh, well, let's see. Another good question. Boy, I would have loved to have heard Bob King on this because he's also one of my heroes in the work. There's a whole kind of crew of people that I grew up with in the profession in the 80s that were, Sandy Fritz being one. I think you had Whitney on as well, being another. There's a whole group of people who really were dedicated. This was their life's work. I don't know. Are you familiar with Nancy Dale?
We've heard her name a couple of times. We're
Okay.
struggling to get a hold of
She's
her.
from our group, from that group, and has persisted. And I just love people who persist from our era. And so she's definitely one that I would point to. Yeah. And she's out here too. I haven't been able to visit her school, but we've threatened to go up and visit with her. My closest friend out here in massage used to run the Connecticut Center for Massage Therapy. They had 3 campuses. Steve Kitts, he would be somebody who'd be interesting to hear from because he was also part of that group, and he started and owned the major massage school in Connecticut, which had 3 campuses at its peak. It's down to 1 now because of the recession and COVID and being bought out by greedy corporation. But Steve Kitts is a wonderful man, and his school was the first school outside of California that I took chair massage to.
Oh,
And so he also has a, very special place in my heart. But you know, these people are super, super smart, a lot smarter, a lot better educated than I am. And they really understand pieces of the history because they were, I was off kind of doing this weird thing, but they were in the profession, and they really, like Sandy, and they really had, different take on what was going on back in the day, back in the 80s, and 90s, and up to now. Steve less so because he's, retired after he retired from massage after he sold the school. But he's also just a wonderful, font of wisdom and historical context. But at the top of my list would be Bob King. If you could bring him back, oh, I mean, what a special, special human being, and who we lost, way too young. But he was in love with the profession, and he didn't single-handedly, but he was the point person for bringing massage into the 20th century, bringing it into contemporary times, making that very difficult transition from what the AMTA used to be to what it is today. I mean, he was the one who set the foundation for that. So yeah, very, very special historical figure.
definitely. Tell our viewers, listeners again, how they can learn more about you or ask follow-up questions, learn more about you.
I'm having my website as part of this process of archiving. I'm having my website redone, but it still has a lot of information on it. It just looks very tired. It doesn't look 21st century for sure. But at TouchPro, all one word, touchpro.com is the website. You'll find links there to a lot of my writings. You'll find links to the massage chair. The video that we talked about is linked on the front page, the home page. You'll find a link to an online class that I teach, or that a younger version, much younger version of myself teaches. And you can test drive that if you're interested in learning more about chair massage. And stay tuned. Get yourself, if you contact me, I can get you on a mailing list, and I will keep you up to date or just go to, probably the best way is to check in through TouchPro on Facebook, because that's where I've got a personal page, but then I've got one for TouchPro, and I kind of try to keep the two separate. And the TouchPro one is just about, my interest in touch and massage, and most recently AI robots that do massage is where I'm keeping track of all of that as well. So my nerdy part. I mean, we haven't even gotten into the philosophical question of, will massage therapists and practitioners be replaced someday? And that's a juicy discussion too.
It's certainly a hot topic right now, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll check those out. David, I want to thank you for your time participating in this podcast interview with us. Thanks so much for your time and your generosity.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and I feel privileged to be a part of your project. Thank you for moving this, the historical aspect, the archival aspect of the massage profession forward, because it's definitely desperately needed, and I hope you can find somebody to create the museum as well, and a real museum, and I'll donate some early versions of the massage chair to it.
Stay tuned. We're working towards that too ourselves. So
excellent. Good to hear that. Thank you so much, Kirby.
Thanks, David.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.